All right. Hey, it's Adam and Robert here to talk about AI and innovation. And today is our very first podcast, and we want to start talking to you about DeepSeek and why DeepSeek is important and why it's in the news so much lately. So very excited to get this kicked off. Hope everyone enjoys it. So we'll start. I'm Robert Steffler. I'm the VP of Data and Analytics here at Vontier. Focus on helping all of the companies in Vontier accelerate their data and analytics journey. And here with me to go on this journey is Adam Phelps.
How you doing? Adam Phelps, Director of Data Architecture, and as a side project, side gig, we do a lot with AI, and we've brought the chat VNT applications and knowledge base to the forefront to help accelerate some of the adoption of these technologies.
Hey, so we've been talking about starting a podcast for probably a year. So I'm excited to actually jump in and give it a shot. So what inspired you to want to do a podcast like this about AI and innovation?
Robert, I think that was you telling me we should do a podcast. But we always had a joke about doing a fireside chat, right? Where you do have a fireplace. I don't have a fireplace behind me. Where we could take on a topic.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I think, this gives us an opportunity. We get to see a lot of interesting things in the AI space and the data space. Hopefully this gives people an opportunity to get to see some of the interesting things we get to do and can come up with some ideas of how they can apply it. So what qualifies us to talk about AI? What have you done in the last couple of years that makes this something people should listen to?
Yeah, so journey here at I guess Vontier was a slow start. I think with ChatGPT coming out, we knew there was a big trend in the market very early on. I think it was January after we all came back of the December break. ChatGPT had been released. It was in the news, the headlines. We said this isn't going anywhere. Let's stick our toes in this. And so we started this quite some time ago, and we have a close relationship with a bunch of our key partners in the space. So probably positions us well to have these conversations.
Well, hey, let's jump into today's topic. So today, I want to talk about something that's very timely in the news, and obviously not only just the AI news world, but the financial news world, and that's DeepSeek. And so for those of you out there, we need to come up with a cool name for our listeners, all five of them. But anyways, I think this is a really interesting topic to talk about DeepSeek, and really understand what it is and get a little bit deeper than some of the news articles and some of the, frankly, some of the overreactions I think that are happening around it. So let's talk a little bit about DeepSeek today. Let's try and give our listeners some understanding of where it really fits in the world and what it looks like. So let's start off with, what is DeepSeek, Adam?
So DeepSeek is a company, an AI company that is based in China. I forget where it is in China. They kind of made the news headlines. They had the release of their original foundation model. Was it just a month ago in December? And there wasn't too much reaction from that. It's one more AI company that's come out with groundbreaking model, as they put it, and there really wasn't a lot of attention paid to it. What caught everybody's attention was the second release they had and the claims of how inexpensive it was for them to make this new model.
Yeah, and I think so. They claimed that the new model, the R1 model, their reasoning model, was something like 5.6 million with an M to create that. And I mean, for comparison's sakes, I think like Anthropic's and OpenAI's models are well over 100 million to create similar type models. So, I mean, if you can do advanced models that can beat those for 5% of the cost, I mean, that's pretty amazing. The reaction, I think, was really interesting in the financial markets. We saw folks like NVIDIA drop. We saw it extend to a lot of the companies like Meta and Google who are in the AI space. And the thing that I thought was really interesting was we also saw companies that are kind of ancillary to AI, all the data center companies, even the infrastructure companies that support data centers, had massive drops, and I think the total drop was over $1 trillion of market cap was lost in one day based on the news coming out of DeepSeek, and I think that's tremendously awesome that something like that can have such a big impact. I mean, obviously not good for a lot of people's stock portfolios, but interesting that it could be such a market mover. Um, what interested you in what you've seen around DeepSeek? So, I mean, the cost is interesting, but what else did you find from DeepSeek that kind of got you looking into it a little more?
Yeah, Robert, I think for me, it's some of the misconceptions of the evolution of kind of these frontier models.
Yeah.
There's the marketing brochure of, hey, here's how fancy our model is. Here's what it can do. These are, again, self claims of how fancy their new model is, and there's also a lot of disparity about the quality and the scoring benchmarks on how these different models operate. One of the things that we stay focused on, or have up to this point with our partnerships, we've got strong partnerships with Microsoft and AWS, and they're using these large US-based frontier models. Those are the ones that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train. They have a significant amount of quality and controls. There's safeguards that are put on this. And so all of a sudden somebody comes along and says, we did this for, $5 million or $6 million. All this investment in these companies like Microsoft and these companies like AWS, people are reacting because they are not the special guys that can do this. It's the next AI startup. And so got interested to do some deeper reading, and there's still a lot of speculation, Robert, right? So it's interesting to see this unfold.
Yeah, I was interested, and I'd love to get your opinion. One of the things that DeepSeek did was they published their models and made it part of the open source community. And I actually saw over the weekend that Sam Altman talked about potentially OpenAI may do that in the future. What does that actually mean for the world in terms of having access to the source code for some of these frontier models?
Well, companies like Microsoft that charge you for a foundation model for the access and per token, which is the amount of data you send in and the amount of data that comes out, it effectively shifts it from these huge data centers, these supercomputers they've been investing and trying to expand so rapidly to, hey, now we have this model that can run on a personal device, or you can spin up your own infrastructure and a couple of VMs or a VM and get the claimed quality that these frontier models do. So it's a big shift, and a lot of people are saying, maybe what they did is groundbreaking. And again, this is something to be seen.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like the thing that interested me was, if you look back 2 years ago, and the quality of the models that were being produced and the cost for those models, and that cost is, they continue to spend significant, hundreds of millions of dollars on this, and the quality has gone way up. The thing that kind of stuck out to me was, if I can reduce the cost of creating a model by 20 times in the matter of 2 years, like in 2 more years, if I can do another 20 times, I mean, this becomes something that almost anyone can work on in the next couple of years and start to create more frontier models. If this actually, turns out to be true that you can do it for this cheap. So, and I know we want to dive a little bit more into that, but I was just interested. I was fascinated by the fact that, it made me think of all the more scaling laws that were happening, back with all the Intel chips years and years ago, and how much the processor speeds went up. And this was pretty fantastic in terms of what this could mean in the next couple of years for people who want to explore these models. So, well, hey, let's dive in a little bit deeper on DeepSeek. I know you and I both read an article recently by Dario Amodei from Anthropic, the CEO of Anthropic. He gave some perspective on DeepSeek that I thought was really interesting, and I'd love for us to kind of go through that, because I think it gives kind of a counter programming to what a lot of the newspapers and a lot of the financial folks were posting, and probably who didn't necessarily understand it as well as someone like Dario, who's in the middle of building all these models out. So um, let's just start. What did you get from the article? What were some of the key takeaways you took from that article? And, what made you say, on that one?
Yeah, I think the way Dario put kind of the evolution of models, like you said, he's in the middle of it. He's running one of the leading companies, Anthropic, for these giant frontier models. Um, he had a very kind of calm reaction to the misconceptions that are out there, and really it was this is how things evolve. This is scale. There was what is it? Scaling. There was shifting the curve and shifting the paradigm.
Yeah.
And I think probably a lot of the market, and if anybody's familiar with Moore's law, which is a concept that IBM came out with probably in the 50s, right? Everybody's addicted to this concept that chips will double in processing every X amount of years. And there was probably a misconception that similar would happen in the GPU space, in the space of the hardware that generates these massive models. And all of a sudden, when somebody like DeepSeek comes out, this concept of Moore's law, gets a wrench thrown in it, and I think that's part of what may have disrupted or had the reaction in the market that it did. It affected the scaling laws.
The thing that I thought was interesting was Dario commented that, if you really plot the capabilities of DeepSeek's V3 model, the underlying foundation model that they built, it's on par with the models that Anthropic and OpenAI produced 10 months ago. Like, that's what it's competing against. And when they're comparing it, it's really looking back 10 months in time. And, the thing that kind of got me was Anthropic and these guys didn't stop 10 months ago. So it's fantastic that it compares to those models, but I've got to believe they're probably on the cusp of releasing even greater things that would surpass what DeepSeek had done. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
It was nice that he disclosed that, right? I mean, that was kind of a little peek under the covers of, great. It looks like what they're doing is about where we were a year ago or 10 months ago. Yeah. There's a concept in there that talks about, how they distill models. I think the equivalent to this model distillation is what you see. There's models called mini models that are out there. OpenAI has, a GPT-4o mini. There's an A mini or an A1 mini, an A3 mini. And so those are distillation models that run much smaller, much cheaper. They execute faster. And really that R1, that reasoning model, they believe is probably through a technique of distillation.
Let's talk a little bit about distillation. So as I understand it, distillation is essentially like if I have my main foundation model, I'm going to train my new mini model or my new reasoning model by asking questions of the major model, taking the learnings from that to train this one. So instead of training it on all of the content of the internet, I'm training it on known answers and specific answers from a model. So my assumption is by that distillation process, I'm cutting down the amount of training and the amount of dollars and processing power I need to get to a really good model that just may not be as broad a knowledge. Is that a fair explanation of distillation?
Yeah, I think, and again, my interpretation, because I'm not building models, Robert, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert on, but all the research that I've done, effectively it's reinforcement learning. So think of it as using that giant model, asking it, call it 1 million questions, building a model out of those 1 million reinforcement learning, and then you end up with a very lean distilled model from the frontier model.
And just for our listeners' purposes, we actually run a 4.0 mini for ChatVNT, right? So we use one of those distilled models to keep costs down and get excellent results based on that. So, hey, so the other thing that I thought was interesting in that distillation, and I saw that OpenAI was opening some investigation to understand whether or not DeepSeek was built off of the OpenAI models. which is funny that OpenAI would complain about people taking information and using trained information when OpenAI went across the internet and used everybody's information. But besides the point, I thought it was interesting because they said that some of the results referred to OpenAI when they're questioning it. So I mean, obviously, OpenAI probably isn't very excited that DeepSeek might be starting there, but from DeepSeek's point of view, I mean, that's got to be a huge benefit to get started with something like that, right?
You again, lots of speculation. If model's response says, according to OpenAI's terms of service, it would seem that they may have used a jump start there.
As DeepSeek publishes more and as people get the hands on the model and really get to see like what the reality is, I'll be curious to see, okay, does creating that first foundation model still really require, billions in chips and hardware? And, the one thing that was really interesting to me was there's this whole concept of Jevons paradox. I was reading about it recently, and the idea is that as you make something more efficient, it doesn't lessen the request for them. So this started a long time ago with coal. Like as things became more efficient with coal usage, the thought was, hey, we'll need less coal and miners will be out of work and all this. And actually the opposite happened. Like coal production skyrocketed because now there's so many interesting use that because it's cheap, you can do so much more. And we see that with computing power as chips became more efficient, 20 years ago, we didn't need less of it. We found new ways to use it. We found new ways to integrate it. And I think what it's basically saying is we'll actually need even more because now we'll start to embed AI in even more places, and we'll need more people that know AI, and we'll need more data centers, and we'll need more power because it can be more widespread in terms of the training. It could be more widespread in terms of the usage.
Yeah, there's a couple of aspects here. Rewind 2 years ago, maybe when the first ChatGPT model came out, everybody's panicking and saying it's going to replace everyone's job. Yeah. And instead, what it's done is given us new ways to work, new tools to work, to be more efficient at what we're doing. And we continue to see the evolution of this. It's a lot to keep up with. To me, it's one of those things that, try and understand it, try and figure out the efficient ways to leverage it. And I'm excited. I mean, to me, this is cutting edge technology. So it's something that takes a lot of focus.
So I want to kind of wrap up here for our inaugural podcast. I really appreciate you joining me for this one. It was a lot of fun to talk through this. What are you going to be watching about DeepSeek in particular?
Microsoft's got a significant investment in companies like OpenAI, $10 or $15 billion to help that company get started. So they own a significant portion of it. But to watch Microsoft's reaction, they embraced it and brought it into their AI Foundry, which is where you can tap into all of their models. I haven't really had the opportunity to play with them internally. We have a vetting process for that, but it'll be interesting to see it unfold.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be, I think the thing I want to watch for, I want to see kind of the outcomes of the understanding of, what did it really take to build these models as people dive in and get the opportunity to kind of take the open source code and go try it. I think that'll be really interesting just to vet out like how big of a deal did they really, use some engineering efficiencies to make a big difference, because that could drive, if the companies like OpenAI and Anthropic can take that and run with it, the models that we're seeing the US Foundation models come out could be, 20 times better, which just would blow my mind. So that's what I'm going to be watching. And then I think, you and I have talked about continuing this podcast. I know we've got a lot of ideas for topics. Would love to hear from all the folks out there who make it this far in the podcast to give us some ideas of things they're interested in. So, hey, so I just want to say thanks, Adam. Thanks for the time today. Thanks to everyone who's listening to this. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.